Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Long Ways Podcast. I'm Devin Windlespect.
And I'm Mike Windlespect.
And we are back with another trail that Michael solo hiked this year. So Dad here, he's been doing 2 hikes, not just one a year. He's been doing a small solo hike in the spring and then doing our larger hikes in the fall together. And so Dad, this year you did St Cuthbert's Way.
Yes.
Border of Scotland and England. And so this is your second solo hike. Last year, there's an episode about it. You guys should go listen to it on Hadrian's Wall. But this is kind of like your second solo hike. You've been going to England a lot for these. But, let's just get started. Tell us a little bit about what is St. Cuthbert's Way? Where is it? Why did you decide to hike it? Yeah, and we'll just let it go.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Devin. I didn't really know very much about who Cuthbert was. And by the way, you're going to hear me also call him Cuddy. Okay, this is something I picked up on the trail where all the local people in those areas call him St. Cuddy. So,
okay.
So if I said the word Cuthbert or Cuddy, it's the same thing. I thought it was kind of weird having a saint named Cuddy, but it kind of grows on you on this trail. I was really looking for another doable, a 60-mile or so trail over a week or so. I really enjoyed the history aspect of Hadrian's Wall path. And so when I picked St. Cuthbert's Way, it was fairly easy to do, and I hadn't heard anything of it. But I didn't do a lot of work on who St. Cuthbert was. I mean, I had some books and I was doing a little bit of reading on it, but not to the extent that it was what I did for Hadrian's. Mm-hmm. I think part of that was because it has this thing I call, they call it a pilgrimage. And it kind of is, okay, just in the fact it's a walking to this one location called the Holy City, the Holy Island, sorry. And, but I didn't know a lot about it. So I was doing it for the history, and we'll get back into that in a second. But it was basically a way to take a trip this spring. I love hiking in England and the United Kingdom and Scotland especially, but just because it's relatively easy to get in and out of. I'm not fighting any crazy language barriers by myself, which could create any sort of problems. And in general, okay, we're not hiking over something that includes the word Alps in it. Okay, so
okay. Not on yours, but on the second one. But anyways, like where is St. Cuthbert's Way when you're looking at England and Scotland?
Yeah, so it basically, if you head due south from Edinburgh, okay, you're going to end up in a town called Melrose, which is it played a pretty large role in early Christianity. There's several abbeys there, which abbeys and priories and things we're going to keep jumping back and forth in our podcast today. And it basically still serves as kind of the center for that area. It's then going to go mostly, it kind of heads like in a southeast direction, and then basically heads west to the coast to a place called Lindisfarne. Right. And Lindisfarne's an island that twice a day when the tides recede, you can drive across to. So it kind of disappears. There's now a causeway, but the early pilgrims would walk to it. And the interesting thing about the Holy Island, as it's called, this was really the center of Christianity in what is now the United Kingdom. This was where the bishops lived. This was really interesting. And as St. Cuthbert plays a role in that. Okay. And this walk is basically a follow of his life, starting as a monk in Melrose Abbey, ending up as the bishop of the Lindisfarne or the Holy Island Abbey there. So it's basically a walk along his route, right? So
when did he live, this St. Cuthbert?
Yeah, that was another interesting thing. He was in this area starting around 650 AD to probably the 670s. In that time, a significant portion at the end, he went and lived on a deserted island as a hermit, okay, where he eventually dies to go fight the forces of evil and his head, okay. But he was basically around between 650 and 680. So this is a time when, this border region I'm hiking through was an area of tremendous conflict.
Yeah.
Between the Scots Vikings, that group, and what would then be the royal groups of England.
Yeah, I mean, so this is, kind of, I'm thinking about, I'm a big video gamer. Like, I'm thinking about like Assassin's Creed and stuff where like time, the Last Viking, or the Last Kingdom is what it's called, I think.
Yep.
Which is, all about like the Norse conquest of like Scotland and England and stuff. And he was living around that time, right?
Yes. So this is the time where basically the Last Kingdom was being recorded in an area called Northumbria, which is really
Mhm.
right here on the border area. And some of the things in that show are actually somewhat based upon fact. Okay,
Yeah.
not a lot of it, but there were these groups, these families, which were like border families called the Kerrs, who were very basically called reavers. Okay, they would fight on either side of of the border and kill people. So this was
Hmm.
a very aggressive time in this area. The Melrose Abbey itself was burned down several times during this. Almost every abbey was sacked in this border region. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you were kind of hiking back and forth across the England-Scotland border at this time. Like, like, taking a step back, what was the trail like? What was this trail like?
So it was a lot of fun. It was not a difficult trail. We had a couple days with some fun ascents and descents, but I really didn't. It wasn't something as different as say the Julian Way or even what we just did with the Lycian Way. It was
Hmm.
a pretty easy. It was lots of walking through the countryside. You felt as if you were in some ways walking through the Shire again. You know, these big, huge fields, big, beautiful. I was lucky enough; it didn't rain, which
Yeah.
is really odd this time of year compared to what I my previous recording on Hadrian's, where it never stopped raining for 10 days. This one, it didn't rain at all. So a couple of the portions of the trail that are notorious for being muddy, gorgeous. The trail is very well marked, except for the start and finish.
Okay.
Again, the start one was obstructed by some scaffolding that took me some time to figure out that that's where the trail
Okay.
started. And the end, I had to walk up to somebody at the abbey at the very end and say, "Where am I done at?" And guy goes, most people just go stand over there by that statue. There's no
Okay.
plaque. There's no nothing, right? I mean, every place else we've been like, congratulations, you finished,
Yep.
But this is just like, yeah, go stand by Cuthbert over there. It's a statue. I'm like, okay. So I have me alongside a green statue. Maybe it's Cuthbert, but the trail itself was really nice. Went through a lot of really nice little small towns, great bed and breakfasts. Not a lot of big road walking, mostly back roads, farm roads, things like that. Just gorgeous. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like the highlights of the trip. You hiked for about six
Yep.
days. What were some highlights along the trail?
I'll tell you what, one of the big highlights for me was actually learning a little bit about Cuthbert. Okay. Because you can't walk this trail without running into him,
Hmm.
history. But the first day I started off, I had a chance to go to Melrose Abbey, and this is where at least parts of Robert the Bruce are buried. Okay.
Okay.
His heart appears to be there. Okay. And so this immediately put me in the mindset of some of the other things, like TV stuff I've watched, movies, books I've read. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm walking in history. And the Melrose Abbey was, is old. And this is, and then I walked to the Dryburgh Abbey from there. And some of these abbeys and forts and houses and stuff, the history was really the highlight. But this is the crazy thing about this is that you'd always think this was just medieval history. I
Hmm.
was walking just outside of Lower and I came across a World War II pillbox right
Interesting.
alongside the road. And I was thinking, why would it be here? And when I asked a park attendant person at the other end of it, they said because they thought England was going to be invaded by the Germans in World War II, and they basically put fortifications across the entire island.
Yeah.
So you're right in history. I mean, it's the same battlefields. It's the places where the gliders were taking off. And so that was a real highlight for me, was really getting to know the history of that region by walking it. That I really enjoyed that whole part of it. The second highlight for me by far, okay, is going to definitely be the people. Both the Scottish and the English, as expected, are, they take travelers in and they make sure they're well taken care of. And, every place I stayed, from hotels to bed and breakfasts, the food was great. They provided you all the information. If you needed something, they got it for you. It was just amazing hospitality. And the Scottish and English, I met some Norwegians on the trail, a couple of Americans. Everybody was really there to really just soak in and experience this, this pilgrimage path that we were on.
Yeah. Like, and I think that's kind of like my next question is like, this is the first time that any of us have kind of like done more of like a pilgrimage kind of thing. That's something that's more based on like religion, the history, the religion of it. Was there anyone on the trail who was there specifically for religious purposes, or did you find anything interesting more about like the ancient Christianity on this hike?
You know, The answer is actually no.
Okay.
I thought that I'd actually be running into people who were doing the pilgrimage for some reason, and then I began to learn that the pilgrimage was more west the one in Spain. Sorry, keep the Camino.
You
Okay,
know.
okay, like which is this giant pilgrimage, which is still used as a pilgrimage now. This was more of people who were trying to follow in the steps of what was really a very great monk. Okay, he really did a lot of great things for the poor and for healing. He lived a very, very poor life.
Hmm.
He's well known for taking care of animals. He was one of the earliest conservationists. He would just walk everywhere. He was a wanderer. So, you got this guy who's kind of like a little early biologist who likes to hike. I make some
Yeah.
connections there on that. But I don't see any people doing the pilgrimage, right? People were curious about it. And in most towns you stopped in, there's going to be some sort of reference back to Cuddy. Okay,
Yeah.
how does this building fit in? But it really wasn't until the end when I really was starting to learn that the reason why they were going to this holy island was this was the center for Christianity. This is where
Hmm.
Christianity basically takes root, okay, in what's now the United Kingdom, okay, and places like Melrose and Dryburgh and others were outlying areas, which were then, unfortunately, having problems with being destroyed, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so it didn't have that huge religious feel to it you may find in other pilgrimages, right? But it was more of acknowledging this really down to earth monk who becomes a saint not because he dies horribly or something, right? Which is
Yeah.
unfortunately the way some saints, but because he basically took care of nature. Okay, he took care of people, of the poor, and he just tried to spread Christianity through love. And it was really pretty amazing that that's why that was there.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, this is now taking a step back here. This is now your second hike through England that have been kind of like a historical hike. The first one being
Yeah.
Hadrian, this one being St. Cuthbert's. You know, a lot of our trails that we hike, they have a historical aspect. Like when we
Mhm.
were in Turkey and the Lycian Way, we were hiking to like these ancient city states and Roman ruins. The Julian Alps, we were like on the borders of like World War I and that kind of stuff. Um, but it really feels like your hikes in England, these solo hikes you have a big historical element to them. And I kind of want to take a step back and be like, what are you learning about kind of England and the British Isles from these hikes? Like what kind of, better understanding of the history of this are you gaining?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm relearning history. I mean, the aspect of history that I've been taught is just one view of it, and
Mhm.
I think is placing yourself in a place where the history defines the people more than anything else. It's their culture. It's who they are. Every single person I ran into had a story for me, not about something that happened hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, times would be they're telling us stories about things that happened before there was a United States or in America, and
Yeah.
so I think it really is what I like about these types of hikes is that you can kind of immerse yourself in the time. I stayed in Woolwich. Okay, I stayed in a hotel which was built 400 years ago.
Yeah.
I think they put the internet in 400 years ago. The entire time I was there, right? But I mean, it was just I'm staying in places that 400 years ago, people who were moving through with goods and stuff would have stopped as a tavern and had a drink, like you see, and people talk about it. It was in this building, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The Tankerville Inn. So it's just experiencing it and seeing it. Remember when we were on the Lycian Way and we go to walk through Olympus,
Hmm.
right? And next thing you know, you're standing in. I mean, that was Greek, okay, but it was definitely built earlier by the Phoenicians, right?
Yeah.
So you get another whole feel for history when your feet are on the same spot that these people's feet were on.
Do you think you're going to do another one next year?
I would like to do the Lake District. Everybody keeps telling me it's a wonderful one to do. The coast to coast would be fun, but I don't think I'd solo hike it because that's a
Mhm.
longer. That's 200 something miles. There are some offshoots and some other ones I looked at. Be honest with you, what I think I may do next time is I may go back and do a couple of the ones back over in Ireland too, just
Yeah.
because we had one really interesting experience there, and I think that would be an amazing thing to do. I think I will go back. I'd like to go back with definitely you and Eric, and hike portions of Hadrian's, or do like a history, series of small history hikes. And it was just pretty amazing. Yeah, some of the castles and fortified houses and stuff I came across. And remember, Hadrian's and Cuthbert's are probably not separated by too much time, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's probably less time between Cuthbert and Hadrian than there is between us and Cuthbert at this point.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah, oh, definitely, yeah, yeah. Hadrian was long gone, obviously, but
Yeah.
it wasn't. One of the places we know that Cuthbert won was Hexham, okay, which is basically a walled city that I actually went through on Hadrian's. I remember how old that was, and he would have made a pilgrimage or a visit there to walk over to that. Several times he went back and forth there. So, I mean, he was well aware of the Roman, aspect of things. It wasn't like it was hidden.
Well, let's take a quick break right here, and then we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. This is Devin from the Long Ways Podcast. I just want to talk a little bit about our Substack that we're also publishing. We publish it every 2 weeks or so, and it's just a little place to go a little bit deeper into the stories on the trail, some of the history, some of the curious moments, some of the times that just made us stop and think about what's really going on kind of behind the scenes of the trail. What are the stories here? What's the history of the place? What are some of the characters on the trail? So they're not very long. They only are about 600 to 800 words, which takes you about 5 to 8 minutes to read. It also includes some of our great photography from the trail from our wonderful Eric. So if that's something that would interest you, go check it out. You can find it at thelongways.substack.com. Once again, that's thelongways.substack.com. All right, back to it. Okay, and we're back. We're kind of like coming towards the end of the podcast here, but for someone who wants to hike St. Cuthbert's, what are 3 things that you would recommend that they pay attention to?
Well, I think the first thing, if you're going to hike anywhere in the United Kingdom in April, be prepared for the weather. Even though Cuthbert does not have any large elevation changes, I think the biggest elevation change I'd have during the day is 400 meters. I remember it was very cold rain, and wind, a little bit of rain and wind at the top of some of those hills at 400 before you got back down the valleys again. So definitely, once again, I did Hadrian's last year and it was solid water and it was dry and warm this year. So it's typical. Be prepared, and be prepared not just because traditionally the weather is supposed to be that way at all, right? The other big thing I would tell people is it is not a technical trail. Okay, so it's pretty easy to solo hike it. You're never far from a town or anything like that. But I think one of the mistakes I made the first day was if you take it over 5 or 6 days, you have plenty of time to walk. You're not site to site walking. There's so much to experience. Take a leisure pace, right? Really, like if you're gonna stop by the Abbey in Dryburgh, even though it's not right there on the trail, right? It's worth just 45 minutes to an hour to walk through it. Try to get to the towns. If you get to the town a little bit early, go find something downtown, to go find the War. Just an amazing little town there. So I think there's all sorts of things to make sure you take a very leisurely pace with this one because of it. The other thing I've said that the only challenging thing I found with this, and I use Max Adventures again, who is absolutely fantastic. And thank you, Max, okay, for trail number 8, okay, that I'm doing, is depending on what time of year you go, accommodations can be kind of difficult. Okay, because you're in very small towns. And so what happens is a lot of these hiking groups will actually set up some logistics, okay, of, we'll have a cab pick you up and bring you over to this town where you spend the night and come on back. They do a great job of that, okay, but plan your day, to accordingly, right? You want to be there a few minutes before the cab, obviously, but you don't want to be there, 2 hours earlier. You don't have a lot to do, right? During, stay alongside the road. So the logistics of also getting into Melrose and then back from Holy Island can be a little bit different, a little bit difficult. So definitely plan out each day where you need to be. And if at some point in time you have to contact like a cab or something in advance or a transport company or something, because some of them will say like an hour out, give you a call. Well, one day I didn't do that, and I got there and I called them. They said it'll be an hour before we come get you.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought, I said I'm going to sit here. I can't do anything about it. So I would say that little bit of logistics was there. So I would say those are really the 3 things, and then read something about Cuthbert. I have this great book. Okay, I'll put up on our website, just called St. Cuthbert's Way: The Official Guide by Ron Shaw. It's easy easy to follow, gives you enough of history so you can carry it with you and just kind of get a feel for, oh, that's what I just saw right there, and and then do a little bit more work on it, research on it.
Well, I mean, I guess the last question for you is, where did you get the best pint of beer?
Well, I'm going to have to say it was in Scotland.
Okay.
Once again, and some of them had very local brews associated with them. I was up at a place called the Manor House in Kirk-Yetholm. I'm sure I'm butchering that name because my gosh, I got corrected on names all the time. Okay. I would say a name and they're like, that's not how you say it. I'm like, okay, I'm a New England Yankee. So, but anyways, it was in Kirk-Yetholm and I was up on staying a little bit out of town and there was a place called the Manor House and I went in there and they not only had the best cold beer up there. Okay. And it was just, I think it was Carlsberg. They may have had a local one there as well, but also they had the best fish and chips I think I've ever had on the entire planet. So yes, I found some great pubs. My problem, as we've warned before, is on this hike, you do cross through some towns, like in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And chances are there could be a pub in there. So, you got to build in the time for that too, if you're going to be, pub crawling in the middle of St Cuthbert. So.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a good place to call it close here, Dad.
Yep.
Well, once again, I'm Devin Windlespeck.
And I'm Mike Windlespeck. And we will see you in Scotland in 2 months.
Exactly. So keep an eye out for our Substack, as we said earlier, and we will have more for you guys to come.
Hey, everyone. Before you go, in addition to our new Substack, we've also been working hard to get some of this amazing video we've been generating on these trips up on our YouTube channel. So if you're a YouTube follower, go over and find us on the Long Ways Podcast. Check us out. We're going to be posting a lot of shorts from some of our trips up there in the next couple of weeks, especially about St. Cuthbert's Way, where we're starting from. So I'll see you there as well. Thank you.